you're questioning which kitchen tools should you buy, I have the 5 kitchen gadgets that you need and the 3 that you can skip. Hi Chefeteers, I'm Chef Nakia and I want you to be more confident in the kitchen and confident with the kitchen tools that you are using. So today I'm sharing with you my 2025 edition of 5 tools you need in your kitchen and the 3 that you can skip. Sometimes people will ask me, Chef Nakia, what cooking tools do I really need to buy? I don't want to clutter up my kitchen with a bunch of tools that I'm never gonna use. There's, of course, the space limitations, but also just like, you don't want to spend the money buying something that isn't going to be used. Now, I will say that whenever you get into cooking specific styles of food, and if you are cooking a lot of like stir fries, let's say, the type of pan that you're going to want to have on hand is going to be unique and different. So as with all advice, you should absolutely take this with a grain of salt and make sure that it makes sense for the types of foods that you like to cook the most often. Alrighty, so the first kitchen tool that you need to have, sharp knives. Minimal knives that you should have are at least 3. It would be a chef's knife, a serrated knife, and a paring knife. Your chef's knife doesn't have to be this large. It could be a little bit shorter like this. But the idea is that you want it to have a nice straight edge, and this style knife with the tapered tip like this is more European style. You could also use a santuko knife, which is the more Japanese style knife. They'll do similar jobs, but in slightly different like hand motion ways. But if you have one or the other, you'll be good. I also recommend having a serrated knife, which is a knife that has these little teeth like this. And this style of a serrated knife is great for bread or cake. The types of products that whenever you cut them, you want to maintain the nice grain and like fluffiness of the product that you're cutting. Those little teeth, they spread out the force of the pressure as you're cutting and slicing down, and so that allows your bread slice to stay nice and fluffy and not get smushed under the weight of your hand just on one solid single blade. And the last one is a tiny little paring knife, and this paring knife is great to use for smaller detailed type work. Fruit or vegetable that has a fairly thin skin, you can peel it with this, or if you are like slicing berries, working with small things, this will give you a little bit more of that fine motor control than like a larger chef's knife would. And of course, along with knives, you want a good cutting board, probably a couple solid cutting boards. Wood is preferred. I like wood the best. Though I cannot lie, at home I do sometimes use a plastic one, especially for fruits and veggies when it's so easy to just throw this in the dishwasher. I do prefer always hand washing my wooden cutting boards because I'm weird like that. Now obviously you need the knives in order to take your larger ingredients and cut them down into the size that you want to eat or cook. Or chef's knives are going to be very important for so many different types of food preparation. So taking care of your knives and keeping them sharp will help you prep food faster and in a more safe way, because a dull knife is more dangerous. And our second and third items all have to do with cooking the food, like actual application of heat to the food. Now, I'm not going to include appliances like a stove or oven in this. This is more about kitchen tools. So the items that I will recommend is a skillet, frying pan style pan, and a stock pot saucepan style pan. Now, this is something that the size of these is going to kind of depend on the food that you are cooking more often. If you are typically only cooking for one person and you only want to buy one frying pan, maybe you get the smallest one or the size up from here. If you have a family of 6, or you are typically cooking for a group of 6 or 8 people, then a larger saucepan, saute pan like this is gonna work out better for you, because you're gonna have to do like 6 rounds of food in this as opposed to cooking in this. Now, why don't I recommend just the larger size for everybody? Well, number 1, storage size, and number 2, if you are sauteing something in this pan and it's only taking up a tiny amount of space in this pan, you're gonna have to add a lot of oil to coat the pan, and whenever really you only need a small section to cook on, and that also takes more energy from your stove to heat up this entire pan and keep it hot. So it's more effective, it will be quicker to cook your small amounts in this, and then your larger amounts in a larger one. Similarly, with the saucepan and stock pot, if you are always making soup for like 10, 12 people, go ahead and get the larger stock pot and use this. Or if you like cooking a lot of pasta, and especially like larger shaped pasta, use a big one like this. But if your favorite pasta is orzo and you're typically only cooking for 2 or 3 people, a smaller size is gonna work out fine. I wouldn't make a big batch of homemade tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, anything like that in a small pan. I'd wanna use something larger like this. And I also wouldn't reheat half of a jar of spaghetti sauce in a big pan like this. I would want to use something smaller because, again, the effectiveness of that heat transfer. These that I have shown you so far are all stainless steel pans. Stainless steel pans oftentimes have a core of aluminum or copper in them. Now, if you aren't interested at all about how pans conduct heat or anything like that, maybe skip ahead 2 minutes or so. But the basics are, there are certain metals that are more conductive of heat, other metals that are less conductive of heat. So stainless steel, for the most part, maintains heat better than something like aluminum, but aluminum will heat up faster. And so the reason why pans will have either an aluminum or a copper core is because that aluminum or copper is gonna heat up fast. It's much more conductive. It's gonna want to grab onto that heat from your stove burner quickly, but the stainless steel helps keep it more evenly distributed because the stainless steel will warm up more slowly and therefore cool down a little bit more slowly. And once it's warm, it will create a more evenly temperature cooking surface. And that is one of the main things that you want whenever you are thinking about which cooking pans to get, especially your like frying pan skillet size, is you want that pan heating up as evenly as possible so that your food cooks as evenly as possible. With something like a stock pot, where maybe you're boiling water, if there are pockets that are warmer, you can stir that, and the liquid in the pan will help you to distribute the heat to the other ingredients in the pan. But it's still best to have a more evenly cooking pan. That way, if you want to let it sit there and simmer, you won't get little burnt spots on the bottom from where it was way hotter than other places. So I do not recommend using just a straight aluminum pan or even a straight copper pan. While they are beautiful oftentimes, copper is reactive with acid. So you wouldn't want to have like a tomato sauce, anything citrusy or with a vinegar in it in your copper pan, because it will react, create that like metallic-y taste. Not to mention that will be bad for your copper over time. That is why I like the stainless steel with a core of either copper or aluminum. Personally, I'm not a big fan of ceramic pans. They're pretty heavy and they take longer to heat up, and so they will maintain pretty even heat, which is nice. I just personally don't love the weight of them. I get a lot of questions too about non-stick pans, And personally, I'm not a fan of non-stick pans because I like to be able to control when I caramelize my food and build a little bit of like a fond on the bottom of the pan. That's like, you know, when your food bits kind of cook on to the bottom, they get kind of brown, they get a unique flavor to them, and then you can add deglazing liquid of some kind, be it wine or juice or water or stock, and then that picks up the fond from the bottom of the pan and you mix it in. I like being able to build that extra flavor when I want to, and that doesn't happen with a non-stick pan. Nothing wants to stick to the bottom, right? Unless the coating on that pan has been worn away over time, in which case then you'll notice that things end up sticking way worse than they would with a stainless steel pan. You can debate somewhere else the health implications of the coating, you know, flaking off into your food and whatnot. That can be a different conversation for a different time in a different place. But you can see my nonstick stainless steel pans. I mean, I use these puppies to cook 4 or 5 times a week, and they are beautiful. I do use some barkeepers, friend on them about twice a year, but if you heat up the pan and then you add some cooking oil and then you add your food in, most things are not going to stick. You really won't have a sticking issue with these pans as long as you let the pan warm up and then you add a layer of oil and let that get a little bit warm and then add your food. Sometimes you don't even need the oil, depending on what it is. I won't get into all of those specifics here, but I'm just saying that you don't need a non-stick pan to prevent food from sticking to any pan that there is out there. And then lastly, when it comes to styles of pans, we have cast iron. Now this is, besides like the stainless steel style, this is my other favorite kind of pan. Is going to warm up more slowly than the stainless steel, but it does maintain its temperature very, very well. You have a well-seasoned cast iron pan. You don't have to worry about sticking issues. And they are heavier, kind of like the ceramic pans. So I tend to use my stainless steel pans more often than my cast iron. Our third kitchen tool that you need to have in your at-home kitchen are baking dishes and sheet pans that you can use in the oven. And if you have something like a, over here, toaster oven, that style cooking also. So I do like having glass baking dishes of a few different sizes. This one is a 13 by 9 and this is a 9 by 9. I use these a lot for roasting veggies, cooking, like baking fish, or honestly for like taking things to neighbors' houses and like potlucky style stuff. Also for casseroles, and then when it comes to baking, you can use these for especially like brownies, blondies, brownies, even if you want to do more of like an apple crisp like bar as opposed to a pie. Like instead of using a pie pan, you can use this for a type of cobbler type dessert. We've got sheet pans also, and there are a variety of sizes that you can get, and I do recommend having one of a few different sizes. Part of that is because if you do have something like a toaster oven where a smaller size will be the only thing that fits, or if you move into a house where maybe the oven is from like the 60s and it's tiny, you need a smaller pan. But then the larger ones will be great for cookies, obviously, or any other dish where you are making a larger amount, and this will fit in your like conventional oven size. As with most things cooking, you want to use the size pan that fits the food the most appropriately. So you want there to be enough space for the most part, for most things. When you're roasting them, you want there to be enough space where each of your ingredients are in like a single layer, so you don't have too much like piled on top of each other. You also don't want there to be so much space around it that you end up with a situation where there's some more densely compact in the middle and then a few loose ones out here, because those loose ones are going to burn before the ones densely packed in the middle are ready. So you want to keep things as evenly spaced out as possible. With sheet pans, I typically layer either aluminum foil or parchment paper on them, just depending on what I'm cooking, and that makes cleanup very easy. It also ensures that nothing sticks to the pan. So sheet pans are great for cookies and a lot of different types of desserts that just need to be like toasted or crisped up. Like if you're toasting some nuts, putting a layer on a sheet pan is great. Again, you could roast veggies in a glass dish or on a sheet pan like this. You can also bake fish or chicken or meat on a sheet pan or in a glass baking dish. If you have a sauce in which the meat is going to be cooking, it can be helpful to have this glass baking dish with the taller sides. Whereas if you are doing something a little bit on the crispier side, the shorter walls on the sheet pan will help get that air movement more directly across the food, which will help to get your food a little bit crispier. I'm sure you already noticed, but when I said 5 tools that you need to have in your kitchen, I didn't really mean like 5 individual, I meant more like 5 categories, because 5 is just too few. But we are going to move on to our next category, which I think wooden spoons deserve their time in the light. I have a few different styles here. I like this one that is a little bit more of a triangular, it's not even really triangular, I guess rectangular angle here on it. I especially like this style for rice. Rice and like stir fry style mixing of things. One that is spoon style with some slats in it, and one traditional spoon shape. Now I personally prefer using wood, other than the fact that plastic utensils, if you do like forget them on the pan, they might melt, whereas these you might kind of burn them a little bit, but they're treated wood, so it's not like they're just gonna burst into flames, whereas like melted plastic just seems really like something I definitely don't want to ever deal with. I for the most part don't use metal because I use stainless steel pans and I don't want that metal on metal. The wood is a little bit softer than the pan, so this is never going to cause any damage on the pan as I'm stirring the food around. So I like the softness of wood, and I like the aesthetics of wood over plastic. There are also those like silicone coated spoons and cooking utensils. I think those are probably fine also. When you're cooking, you're always going to need something to help you deal with the hot food, whether it's mixing it around or like picking it up off of the platter. So number 5 are tongs. This is, I think, your other super important tool to have to move around food. The reason that I don't mind that these are metal is because I'm not going to be scraping against metal pans with these. I am gently lifting food up off of pans. Now you can always give things a quick little stir like this, or kind of like a spatula. If something's smaller, you can kind of use it as a spatula. So it's multifunctional in the sense that you can grab like this, stir like this, or kind of spatula up it like that. They're also really great to take as serving utensils for any potluck dishes. The tongs give you so much more control, and therefore I feel like you spend less time manipulating your food because you have so much control. You can just very quickly have it do whatever you want it to do, and these feel the most like an extension of your hand. So that is why I definitely keep tongs on the top 5 items that you need to have in your kitchen. So what do I think you don't need in your kitchen? what are some of the things that are very trendy and popular out there that I would not recommend you spend your money on? The first is a fairly broad category, but it's pretty much like any tool that has a single use. Anything that you're not going to be able to utilize for multiple different functions. This broad group has the huge caveat of, unless it's food that you cook all the time. I oftentimes think also of like a garlic press. You can chop up your garlic with a knife. And I find garlic presses sometimes that waste like so much garlic, you don't actually get all of it mashed through. And whenever you chop up garlic on your own, you get to control the size of it. Also sell minced garlic in jars, so like if you must, you could also choose to go that route. A few other examples of this are like food choppers, where maybe you can lay a strawberry in a little plastic piece, and then it's almost like harp strings, right, that you can slice over it, so it'll slice your strawberries. So yes, maybe when you go to slice strawberries, it might save you a little bit of time doing that, though you still have to top your strawberry and slice it in half typically to get it to fit well in there. I might as well just slice it up with the knife that I'm using on the cutting board that I'm using. You definitely don't need it. You're gonna be able to slice a strawberry, mince garlic, all of that stuff without individual tools. For the most part, for me to bring anything into my kitchen, I need to think of at least 2 to 3 to like ideally 5 or 6 different ways in which I'm going to use that and where it will actually save me time. The other broad category is kitchen gadgets, especially small kitchen appliance style things that do the same task as something that you already have. For example, if you already have a stand mixer, you don't need to buy like an electronic egg beater. Another good example of this is air fryers and like toaster ovens, kind of even like any kind of oven. I know air fryers are like super trendy, and you may have one and you may use it all the time, and that's great. But if you are on the fence about if you need one or not, air fryers are basically just tiny little convection ovens with a relatively strong fan for its size. If you already have a toaster oven, have an oven that you are used to using, there's not really a need for an air fryer, for your air fryer, unless you like having several small appliances and you love getting into the corners and cleaning all of the parts of little machines like that. So you don't really need to buy a brand new appliance to do a job that another one of your appliances, tools, or gadgets is already handling just fine. And what else do you not need? You don't need everything to be in like a perfectly cohesive color scheme. You don't need to buy new spoons or whisks or casserole dishes or ceramic pans just to fit a color scheme. It can look beautiful in magazines and Pinterest photos and whatnot, but it's not going to affect the flavor or texture or deliciousness of your food. And it's kind of a ridiculous amount of consumerism to replace perfectly good utensils with the same utensil just in a different color. And if we're being honest with ourselves, are we going to be happy with that same color scheme forever? Probably not. And so we're probably going to end up wanting to change color schemes before the life of that utensil has been fully served, right? So you're going to end up throwing away or getting rid of perfectly functional utensils just to fit in with the next color scheme. I get it, like it is fun to look at pretty things. Just maybe think twice next time you're at the store and you see a kitchen gadget in like a super cute color that you think is really pretty, but you know that you have a perfectly well-functioning one at home. Maybe skip that one. So there we go, that is my 2025 revision of 5 tools that you need at home and 3 that you can probably skip. I hope that these kitchen tools can help up your cooking game. If you or someone you know is going off to college or like getting their first apartment out of college and they need to stock up that kitchen, these are the 5 things that you should focus on, maybe 3 things to stay away from to make the most of your purchases. And then as you become more comfortable with cooking and you notice the tools that would serve a purpose that nothing else in your kitchen can, then you can continue adding to your collection. What do you think? What are your favorite tools in the kitchen? What are kitchen gadgets that you feel like has totally revolutionized the way that you cook, whether it's made it easier, helped you reduce your food waste, or saved you time? Let me know below in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed this video about essential kitchen tools. Thank you, Chefeteers, and until next time, I hope that you have beautiful culinary adventures in your future.